Hey there, welcome to my channel. In the previous episode, we have worked on our category section where we have added our main category and subcategory functionality. And finally, we have added some kind of display logic as well as, if you can see in this page, where we are displaying our top categories and all related product to that specific category, right? So now, if we are going to add the product, then we have at least the realistic the category listing where we can show specific category for the product, right? And we can just create it. So that created product will be reflected under specific selected category, right? We are going to revisit this category section once more while we are going to add the full text source feature for our product and the categories, where we can find our product by name and category and subcategory by name, right? And we are going to segregate the subcategory from this category root because right now we are using the single root for both the category and subcategory. Today we are going to work on the add to cart feature of the user service, where we need to interact with the product service as well as, right? So let's understand the communication between product service and user service. Let's understand the microservice communication. While we are building our microservices, make sure it has to be loosely coupled, it has to be less dependency, it has to follow the secure pattern, it has to be segregated read and write use cases. That is the way we can keep our microservices clean and it can be scalable. Let's understand these three major services, how exactly it's going to be communicate with each other. So first of all, each microservice has their couple of limitations in terms of like user service can only keep all the user related informations in terms of the user profile, user data in terms of the contact number, address, and all those things, right? And maybe some of the information, user card item informations, or user payment informations, all these things we can just keep it right here, right? But what if we have certain operations that is exactly dependent on some other service, right? At that time, what we will do? At that time, we need to figure out like what are the read and write use cases we can follow for that specific microservice, right? So in that case, there are two scenarios we need to figure out. The first of all, what are the write cases? As an example, we are the user service is going to be place an order, right? At that time, user can have all the information related to the card information, all the money information, all right, and all the card item informations, right? But that is not a kind of user service responsibility to create the order and keep all the data in user microservice. That is not user service responsibility at all, right? So it's bound to be like only keeping the user information. So in that case, it will simply transfer all this information to transaction service, right? With the help of some kind of mechanism in terms of it may be message queue or maybe direct HTTP call, maybe RPC call or something. So everyone know like, yeah, microservices is cool, like let's use message broker, let's use something else. But end of the day, we are ending up like, what is the right approach or what is the right tool we need to use for the specific case, right? So let's try to figure out. So first of all, we have user and we have a card information, all right? So while you're adding to the card, then at least user should have to have the information, yeah, this is my card and these are the card items. But where the card item will come from? It will come from the product, right? So we should have to have some kind of mechanism where we are adding to the card at the time specific product information, we should have to have it. Because if we are going to pass these things from front end, then maybe that's a kind of not the right flow, right? Then your user can intercept your price or product information, whatever it is right there, right? So that in that scenario, what we are going to do, we are going to keep the product ID reference, right, in the card item, and we are pulling like while you are going to add to cart, then our card will be going to be created, and that card will be having some kind of card items, and that the card items will be having all the product information which will come from the product service with the help of some kind of the reading mechanism, right? That's cool. Then this is sorted. Now, here, while we are placing the order, at the time, we're not supposed to read something from the transaction service, or we should not supposed to get all the information from the product service, right? Because this part, the aggregating all the product information and storing temporarily in the user service just for create order operation, that it has to happen in this stage, right? And this stage, what we will do, then user service will simply create the order, right? and it will push the data to transaction service with the help of some kind of message queue or maybe fire and forget or something else, right? In that case, user service operation is done in this case. Now, whatever the future operations in terms of like delivery, in terms of dispatching, all these things going to be handled from here transaction service. So simply it will just create the order and it will send some kind of event to the message broker or maybe HTTP call or maybe some kind of like you can say in a step function also we can use, and just simply push the data and forget it. All right, we are done. We have just created the order. Cool. Then transaction service will come to the play to consume that specific event and store the data, create the order data in the order table. So when user will come to this order section, like user can see from the client side, like your order has been created successfully. That's perfectly fine, right? Then he can go back and you can see in the transaction service, like, yeah, this is the order, this is the amount, and this data is just like on queue or maybe it dispatch or something. That is going to be handled from here. So now you can see the whole process we have added in the two-way in terms of like one is the reading and one is the writing. That is the segregation we just discussed right here, right? Read and write as use cases we need to segregate, right? So for reading the card items, so in our case, you can see if you go to this diagram right here, right? Add to cart. There's no any kind of product information right here, right? So it belongs to product service. If you go to table, right? Here in the shopping cart table, we can see we are storing our ID, right? That's a kind of primary key of the shopping cart, and user ID just for keeping reference. This shopping cart belongs to this user, and that shopping cart can have a cart items, right? So I have added a couple of fields just to make you understand why exactly it is needed, right? So we can just get rid of all these things also. That's not a problem. So now you can see we have the cart items, right? The shopping cart can have multiple items. That cart item can have an ID, and it's kind of shopping cart ID, this ID exactly. And it can have the product ID that will come from the product, right? So in this case, here, so this specific operation, it has to take place while we are adding to the cart, right? It will not repeatedly call that the product service, hey, we have added this card, give me the data. That's not a kind of good experience at all. Yeah, it can be possible also. That's up to like what kind of design pattern or what kind of principle we are just try to follow. But in this case, you can see like we are just try to keep some kind of minimal data, all right, in the card item as well as. That's not a kind of purely like whole product model. You can see this is the complete product model where seller ID, dealer ID, deal ID, availability, description, category ID, a lot of informations are available. So we are only interested at least the minimum viable information. We are just try to keep it here as a name, as a price, image, right? And the item quantity and shopping cart ID and item ID or product ID, that is essential for the cart item. But these are the additional information we are just to try to keep it in order to revoke the dependency in terms of like every time whenever you are going to view the cart, you need to call the product service, hey, give me the product informations. So that is also another way we can do it, but we are just to try to revoke that specific dependency. So that's why we are just keeping it all these informations here while we are going to add to cart, right? So let's try to understand. I'm gonna open one of the website as an example. Now you can see these are some of the products I have added. Can you see? This is the product information, all right? Product title and product quantity is there, product image is there, and product price is there, right? If you can see here in this table also, you can see name, price, and image URL, right? These are the three information we are just keeping additionally, right? The quantity tool, it is needed just to calculate like what are the aggregated amount for your cart. That is exactly it's needed, right? Price also it's going to be needed. Now you can see at least if the product service also down at any region, right? At least you can see all these things from your user service, right? If you go to the cart, at least you can see, yeah, this is the product the image, and this is the product name, and this is the price exactly, and this is the quantity which is I have added, right? Now, if you click on this one, then it will take you to that whole specific page, right? Whole product page. That is exactly coming from the product service. As you can see, this is the product ID, right? And if you hover it here also, you can see this product ID has a different number, right? Here in the bottom side, you can see this is different, this is different, and this is different, right? So once you click here, then it will call the product service, hey, give me all the product details. So now you can see whole bunch of informations are available, right? That is what we are just try to make it right here, right? But again, it's up to you. You can just revoke all this information, but while you are viewing your card in this page, again, you need to call the product service, right? Give me all the product informations, and you need to process in backend and display it right here. That is also you can do it. Now let's go to the product service and add some functionality so at least our user service can reach out to that specific card item. Now reading data through microservice there are a lot of possibilities, but there are plenty of choices you can go with: HTTP, RPC, or async call, and event bus. All right, HTTP is a kind of normal call, which is we are going to implement for a while, and then we are going to look into that RPC call, and this is called the async function, where because we are already using the Lambda functions, right? So Lambda to Lambda call also can be possible with the help of the API gateway, and we can implement some kind of the event bus as well as. All right, let's jump into the source code. Here in the source code, right, I'm gonna close everything from here. Right after this product API, we are going to create one more Lambda function that is called our message queue.ts. We are just keeping a name. Name is kind of message queue, maybe letter states. We are going to implement all the message queue operations right here in this Lambda function, right? Very simplified way, we just are going to copy all these things from the product API, copy here, and edit everything right here, okay? And make sure we are implementing MIDI as well as, so MIDI, right? And try to import MIDI. So I have installed MIDI. This is MIDI core. So make sure you are also double check like you have already added the MIDI core and MIDI HTTP JSON parser or not. Let's try to remove everything from here, all these things, and this one also, and try to wrap it up with MIDI, and finally use the middleware. And here we are going to use the JSON body parser, which will be import from our JSON body parser. Try to call it, right? Now in the product service, we need to add some kind of response that the way we did for our other services, right? The user service, maybe we did that one. So that is what we need to do. Go to this category service, yeah. Category services, copy these things from here, and go to product service, edit right here also. Response with error. So at least in the message queue, at least we have something to return from here. Okay, so we need to provide this one with event. My bad. Okay, cool. So as soon as we are getting called this message queue, right, then it will perform all the required operation and provide some kind of data to other service, right? If you see in this diagram, so what kind of information is going to be needed right here? Once we are adding to the cart, then specific product ID we will be providing from our user service, right? Then the product service will provide that specific product to our user service, right? That is we need to add it. So let's try to add some method quickly in the product service. In the bottom of this file, right after delete product, let's try to add one more function. And we're going to add some kind of input that is going to be needed. The way we have added for our create product, let's try to grab everything from here and add it there, right? So this is definitely, it's not product input, right? Let's go to DTO model right here. Here, create one more file that is called our service input TS. So all this service input, we are going to add it here inside the service input. I'm gonna add some code quickly and get back to you shortly. Perfect. So we have added this service input, or maybe you can say service payload also. That's that we can keep the name. But this is the action exactly we can utilize in Puser also, the way we did in another microservice series. Some kind of the payload, we are just to try to call it from another service. So in order to grab or in order to perform that specific operation based on the payload also. Okay. So that action we can keep it. And this is the data exactly it's needed for our product ID, right? That is the way we can keep it. But right now, let's keep it as a kind of product instead of data. All right. So let's try to implement this one. And in the product service, if instead of this product input, we can provide it with service input. Fine. Now this JSON parser body exactly it's not required because we are already been used the MIDI for this handle operation, right? And that is we can just assign it here. Maybe directly we can assign it here, service dot handle operation, and here we can keep the event, right? Then we can get rid of this one. Now we can provide it just like this. All right, so now we have our input and we have validated our input as well as right here. And now let's try to get the product information from product repository and finally return success response. Success response, we are simply returning the empty object. So technically this error has gone, I believe. Let's close others. Already we have one function, that is we are getting the product ID, right? Yeah, this one. So if you go here, you can see the find product by ID, right? This is the thing exactly it's needed, but we are not returning any kind of promise here. So let's try to return as product dog. We need to put weight, right? That's perfectly fine. Now if you go here in the product service, little bit down, yeah, here we can get the product ID. So we're just to try to deconstruct everything and put weight this repository and get product by ID. So this ID will become from input dot product ID. Right. Now let's try to deconstruct everything from once we are getting the product ID. All right, let's try to deconstruct. So ID will be getting probably ID, right? And another thing is name we will be getting, right? Another thing, price we will be getting it price, and image URL. So these are the things are needed. But once we are returning the data from here, response, right? Let's try to make this one as product ID because we are not using anywhere this ID convention, right? So let's try to convert it. So that means while we are receiving the payload, right, response payload in our user service, we will be receiving the product ID, name, price, and image URL. That's perfectly fine. Cool. So our product service is perfectly, it's ready. Now let's try to print it out, like on the input also. We'll try to check it whether it is working correctly or not, right? Now our this handler is ready, right? Mrs. Q handler is ready, and once we are calling this one, then we are getting all this product informations from here as a payload. Cool. Now somehow we need to hook up these things with our API gateway. So how we can do that? So let's go to live, right? Here in the API gateway, first of all we need to go to service stack, right? So here one more function we are going to add it. Cool. This Q service function we need to assign it here as well as, right? So let's try to copy this one and kindly double check, like, you know, if you copy these things, all right, make sure these names should have to be different, right? So in this case, our Q service, as an example, Q Lambda, Mrs. Q Lambda, right? And this is going to be our Q service. And this is the Lambda function, which is we have created here. That's called Mrs. Q, right? This file. So just to try to assign it here. Mrs. Q, yeah, TS. That's cool. Now it is assigned. Name is different, right? Make sure each and every Lambda function has a unique name, because otherwise it will going to be conflict with the name and you cannot deploy the stack, right? This function, right? Double check. Yeah, it is cool. Now our service stack is ready. Let's go to the product service stack here, right? Here in the product service stack, we need to import that one as well as while we are just creating our product API gateway, right? That function we'll be getting it from here while we are creating our new service stack. Q service, right? This is added. Now let's try to add this new queue service to our API gateway stack. Queue service, but it is complaining. Because why it is complaining? In API gateway stack, we don't have that specific function, right? So let's try to add that one as well as. So now queue service is added, but we don't have any kind of resources for a while, right? So what resource we are going to add? Something like this, right? Because only one endpoint is needed, because we are not going to allow that specific request to call the get or some other endpoints. Only we are going to add it as a post, and name will be like products queue, right? Queue, and it has to be the post request, and make sure the endpoint we are providing that the specific function endpoint that is called queue service. All right. Now our API gateway also done, and our product service also done. Everything is it's perfect. Now this is the time where we are going to build it, right? And we will try to call some kind of the API call from here. Let's try to run the application. Perfect. So our server is running on localhost 3000, and let's go to the Postman. Here, let's try to call this get products this page, right? So it's a get call, and this is my base URL, which is I have just kept it here in environment variable section. This is the product URL, this is the user URL, and the current value is like this, right? You can add it from here. Cool. So now we have that there are 3 products. We are getting it from the product section. Let's try to grab this product from here. Add one more endpoint. Cool. So now you can see we are getting all the payload, right? This is our product ID, this is the name, this is price, and this is our image URL. So this is the exact same thing we are going to add on while we are adding to the cart, right? Let's set this URL and let's go to the product service. All right, so let's add some code in the user service. In the user service, we need to create one migration, right? Let's create the migration. So create migration, and we are going to give a name that is called the cart and the cart items, right? Now our migration file is created inside this migration directory, inside the SQLs. So here in the migration file, inside this migrations and SQLs directory, we are going to add some code in the cart and cart items in this app.sql file. So here, let's create our tables quickly. Perfect. So we have created 2 tables that is called shopping cart and our cart items. Shopping cart will be having 3 fields that is called cart ID and user ID, and they created that. And cart items will be having these are the fields for the cart items. That's called item ID, cart ID, and certainly this cart ID will be reference to that the shopping cart. And after that, the product ID, that is where we will keep the product information, right? And name, price, image URL. These are the minimum viable information we are just keeping just to display the cart items. Okay. And this is our cart item quantity, and this is created at. And we have additionally created one index, because while we will be looking from our cart items and that specific product, we need to find it out, because the product ID is a kind of string. That's why we need to just create a kind of index in order to foster the search query. Cool. And for adding the relations, we have added the relations because this shopping cart, it belongs to the user, so we need to add the relation, right? Shopping cart has a kind of foreign key that is called user ID, and that user ID reference to the users table, where you can see in the user table here in the initial, this one, and this is the user primary key, right? Now another relation we have added that is called the cart items, because this cart items, it belongs to that specific shopping cart, right? So cart items add a foreign key that is called the cart ID. This is the key, and a reference to the shopping cart, right? And a reference to the shopping cart, which primary key that is called cart ID, right? That's all. Cool. So let's try to run this migration. Okay, it seems like we have one error. Let's try to figure out what error we have. Okay, so we need to remove this one. This is not required. Okay. So now maybe we can go ahead and run it. Yeah, it is perfectly fine. So we have just kept one comma right after this SQL query, so that's why it is giving error. So now if you go to this table plus, you can see here in table plus, and we have our tables. Perfect. So now let's add some code here in this cart and cart items down.sql, because while we are going to run the migration and down, then it has to delete this specific table. So first, what we need to do, we need to remove our constraint, right? So the way of creating the table, right? First we are creating shopping cart, then we are creating our cart items. So while we are deleting the tables, make sure we are putting in the reverse order, right? So what we are going to do here, first of all, make sure alter table. So now here, this constant, you can see first the cart item, all right, then the cart ID, and then F key. So what we need to do, we need to add this cart item, the table name, and after that, add the foreign key name, right? Then right after that, you just append that the dash F key, right? The same way we are going to do for our other table also, right? That is called our shopping cart, and this time what we are going to do for shopping cart, this shopping cart will come over here. This one is shopping cart, and this is going to be user ID F key. So this is how we are doing. First of all, because the cart item, it is exactly dependent on the shopping cart, so we cannot remove this table first. All right, so we need to drop this table first, and then only we can drop it. But while we are dropping the table, it will not dropping this constraint also. So make sure let's drop all the constraint first, then drop the table. The same way we are doing for this one as well. Let's try to run make migrate down. Now you can see our table has been deleted. If you go here and if you refresh, then you can see there's nothing else left, right? And again, just to try to run make migrate, now our table has been created. And if you go to table plus once again and refresh this one, then you can see our cart item table is there and shopping cart also there. If you go to structure, if you can click on the info, then you can see our constant also it's being created. Cool. So this is the way we are just creating our tables. So we are not creating the tables manually. Right. Now our tables are ready. Let's add some code to the user service. So at least while we're handling the create cart items, and then at least we should be able to communicate with our product service as well as. So here inside the services, so I'm gonna create one more service that is called cart service. Yes, because it will be not a kind of good idea to keep everything in the user service class, right? So a couple of things we can get it. So let's copy all these things from here and add to the cart service, and make sure all the user related informations in terms of our user operations, create user till here, we can just remove it, right? And a couple of things we can remove, that is called the payment methods, because that's not a part of this cart service. Or maybe we can just add these things in the later stage also. And go to user service and make sure to do the same things for the card section. We're removing the card section code from our user service class, right? Now our card service is totally a separate service class. Cool. Now what we are going to do here, first of all, make sure in the handler, user handler, we are importing that specific class, right? Just to handle the card operations, because all the card related operations are right now it's revoked and it's giving the error, right? Let's try to handle this one. Okay, so we have replaced everything, but we have not renamed this class, right? So let's try to rename this class. Let's call card service, right? Now we can figure out this one from here. Make sure instead of app just to put double dot, right? Now card service is here, and in the card service, instead of this service here in the card section, let's put this one, service, card service, create a card, card service, update card, card service, and get card. And one more thing we need to do, that is called delete card, right? This is going to be delete. Absolutely, this function doesn't exist right here. So let's go ahead and create one. This is called delete card. Delete card. Perfect. So now our card is hooked up with this one, right? This card function. The card handler can handle everything. Now one more thing is left, because this card service is using the user repository, right? It shouldn't supposed to use the user repository. It has to be a separate repository for the card service. So let's create that specific repository. So here in the user repository, we can just go ahead and copy this class, copy, and add it here. Let's rename this user repository to card repository. Yeah. And we can get rid of all this functionality, right? Right here. And now this is perfectly fine, but this is not a user repository, this is card repository. Card repository. Let's go to this card service and replace this user repository with card repository. Repository. This is going to be like this. Make sure this path we need to handle it. So instead of app, we are giving double dot, right? That's gonna work. So now now seems like our user handler is perfectly fine. Everything is hooked up, right? Let's go ahead and create our first card, right? Here in the create card section, first of all, let's get the user token, and then we will be validate our inputs, and we can perform some certain operation. So here in the user service, if you can see in the edit profile section, we are doing pretty much same thing, right? So grab this piece of code from here, right? Close everything. We're just keeping the card service, and here inside, let's edit this piece of code. So we are going to remove this one. For a while, this is perfectly fine. Payload, we are going to get the authorized user, but this time what we need to have some kind of input, right? Card input. So card input, we need to add inside the DTO file, where we will be adding some kind of the parameters in terms of like, while user try to create some card, then user should have to provide the product ID, right, and the product quantity. So at least these are the two informations going to be needed. So let's go to here inside the model, inside the DTO. So create one more file that is called card input ts. Let's add some code quickly here. Perfect. So we have our card input where we are collecting the quantity and the product ID, right? And another thing we are just adding here that is called update card input, because while we are going to edit our card also, that is also necessary, like we need to give some kind of informations in terms of like how many numbers of the quantity you are just to try to add, or maybe the remove, that is we need to add it, right? So these are the two input. It is perfectly fine. So let's go ahead in the card service. Let's place with this one. Instead of the profile input, we are going to add card input, right? That has been imported here. Let's try to put double dot. Okay, and now our card input is ready. So this is the time where we will be going to create our card. Let's go to repository. Here in the card repository, let's add a couple of functions. Perfect. So these are the functions we are going to work on, because first of all, we need to find the card, all right, by user ID. And after that, we need to create our card. Then let's find the card item by ID, because the card item can have two possibilities. One is the card item by ID, its primary key, and another is like card item by product ID, because it can have a product ID as well as, right? And sometimes we need to find it out if that the product is already existed, that increase the quantity number or something like that. And after that, one function that is called the find the card items. If we are provide the user ID, then we need to find all the card items related to that user. Then one function that is called the create a card items, right? And update card item by ID, because we need to update when certain operations need to do in terms of, as an example here in this website. If you go to the shopping cart, right, you can see I can change my quantity, right? Click here, then you can change it, right? So this is happening exactly right here. This is what exactly happening from here. Update card item by ID, right? And update card item by product ID. This is going to be called when you have already one product exist, and next time the same product, if you wish to add to the cart, then it will look by that specific product ID, because at the time you will be not having the item ID, you are not going to pass it from front end, right? So at the time it will look for that specific product is already exist, then update the quantity. That's all. So, and finally we are deleting the card items. So these are the operations we are going to handle it. So right before adding some code here, let's create the couple of models. That is going to be two models. One is the shopping cart, and another is card items, right? That is we need to create it. So here inside this model directory, right? Add new file. Right, so our card model is ready, where the same structure we are just trying to follow. That is called product ID, name, image, URL, price, item quantity. And these are the optional value in terms of like to evaluate that specific card model while we are trying to retrieve. That's why actually we have put this item ID and the card ID as a kind of number, right? And let's add some code in our shopping cart model as well as. Yeah, this created it's not required. At least these are the two is perfectly fine. Go to our card repository. Let's add some code in the find card item, right? This find, maybe we can just say find shopping cart. Shopping cart. Create shopping cart. Create shopping cart. Cool. So here, let's add some code. right? So let's try to rename as a model, right? So here also shopping cart model, else false. Okay, so what we did here, so first we have renamed this one shopping cart as a shopping cart model just to make it identical, right? The way we did for our other models, right? And if you go to here in the cart repository, we are querying our data, selected cart ID and user ID from the shopping carts, right? And where user ID will be that first parameter, right? This is called user ID, which is we are going to pass it here, right? Then we are executing the query here, and we are trying to find out if there is a result is its row count is greater than 0. If it exists, right? Then provide that specific data, right? As a kind of shopping cart model. Otherwise, return is false. So while we are evaluating this query, we are looking for if it is false, then they create a new one. And if it is not false, it has some data, then go ahead and perform some operations on it, right? Now let's add some code here in the create shopping cart also. I'm gonna copy this piece of code here and add it right here. And instead of this one, what we are going to do, we're going to add insert okay, so now this is also the similar, all right? The shopping cart, if you can see in the table here in the migration, inside the migrations, yeah, here, it has only, this is the valid input, which is exactly we are collecting from our user, right? This is going to be automatically going to be created by our PostgreSQL, and this is also going to be created by our PostgreSQL. Only we need to provide this user ID input, right? And that's why insert into the shopping cart, right? User ID, the values will be the first parameter and return everything once this is created. So this is executing the query, and we are again trying to find out like if it is exists, all right, it's created perfectly, then return it, otherwise just return false, right? So let's go ahead and give it a try with these things first, right? Here in the cart service first, perfect. So now we are trying to find out if this card is exists, right, by this specific user, right? Just get it here. Otherwise, just to create a new one and assign it here also. Okay. Now this section is done. Next section is like right, here in the create card function, we have our authorized user, we have our correct input, and finally we are just to try to find out if any kind of the card is exist for that specific user, then assign to this the current card variable, right? And if doesn't exist, then create a new one for this, right? Now let's add some code to find out the existing item, because these are the steps we are going to follow in order to create the card. Right? We have already added a couple of functions right here. You can see find the card item by product ID, because this is the function which is we are going to use it. So let's add some code here, right? Then we can just move forward from here. Cool. Let me close everything from rest of all files from here. So here we are accepting the product ID. So let's add some code in order to find our card item by product ID. I'm gonna add some code quickly and I'll get back to you. Here, find card item by product ID function, we are simply querying this sort of tree data, right, from our card items, where product ID, whatever product ID we are going to looking for, right? And finally, if there is a data, then we are just simply casting to our card item model, right? And if there's nothing, it's exists, then we are just returning false from here. Okay, and let's add a couple of more codes for. Let's handle the create card item function as well, as because while we are going to add all these things, then a couple of things going to be needed. So that is we need to handle it, right? So first, let's try to create the card item. So here in the create card item function, we are simply taking kind of input of that is called the card item model. That is we have been used right here as well as, right? And we are deconstructing all these variables, all these required fields, right? And we are inserting the items to the card items, all right? Card ID, product ID, name, image, URL, price, and the item quantity, right? All the values are below. So make sure, like, the numbers of the variables, numbers of the parameter, we are passing it right here, and the same placeholder we are providing or not. That is just to make sure. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And here also we have 6. And the same values we are just providing in an array, right? Card ID, product ID, name, image, price, item quantity in the same order, right? And finally, we are executing the insert query. And once that is done, then we are just returning it. Yeah, it is created. And one more function we need to take care of, that is called update card item by product ID, because that is going to be necessary, right? And let's try to add some code quickly right here in this function as well as. So this is my account now. So here in this function, update card item by product ID, we are simply updating our card items by setting up update quantity, whatever the quantity we are passing it right here, where the product ID will be the specific product ID we're looking for. And finally, we are executing the query. We are finding out if it is inserted correctly or if it is updated correctly, then the return the data, otherwise return false. Right, cool. Now let's go ahead in the card service and accomplish the remaining part. Right, so let's handle one by one all these cases. All right, so here, right before creating the card, we need to have the card item data, right? So that is we need to do it. This step exactly we need to do it first. Then we can just finally we can create the card, right? Here. All right, so now we need to perform this step, right? Then we can move forward. So let's just try to get it done. Here inside the app directory, I'm gonna create one directory that is called our message queue. Right? Message queue. All right, let's create one file that is called index.ts. Right. Here in this index.ts file, I'm gonna add some code quickly, and I'll get back to you. So cool. So now here in this index.ts file inside the message queue, we are going to add a couple of more implementation for our queue, because we are going to implement the SQS queue. And but for a while, for the HTTP call, we have added this function that is called pull data, and we are accepting kind of request data that is a kind of record of as a kind of dictionary type of data, which is called string, and any kind of data we are just receiving for this request, like string and unknown, right? It may be string, it may be number or something else. And finally, we are calling a kind of post request to the service URL, product service URL. That is absolutely, it will come from our process.env, where we will be implement our AWS the secret manager. And right now, once we are calling this one, then it will call the product service and get the data and return to our service. So let's try to implement this one in card service. Here, right after this one, and finally, once we are getting this data, all right? So here we need to convert this data to card model, right? Then how we can convert this one, because we have already used our formatted data from our product service, so it will become inside the data something like this way. Data So something like this way, right? So rather than use it that way, we can just simply cast these specific things to here. Card item will be the data as card item model. Cool. And here also we need to make a check, like because this check is for this one, right? If it doesn't exist, then we are going to create this one, right? But this one also, maybe it can be Boolean, all right? So make sure we have kind of little check here. If current card item true, then we can just provide this one right here. Otherwise, just to throw this error. Right. Maybe we can just work on a little bit on the error handling in this part, right? But the well, let's go with this. At least we can just check how the card is getting created. Cool. Okay, so let's put it inside this. All the steps are done. Only one thing is pending. We need to return all the card items to the client, right? So here in the card repository, we have only one function that is called the find card items by user ID. So we can add one more that is called find card item by card items by card ID. So here we can just simply pass card ID, card ID. All right. Then how the way we have finding out the card item, right? Here somewhere, yeah, find card item by product ID. The same thing we can utilize here, but in this case it will be card ID, item quantity. Maybe we need name as well as name, image URL as well as, right? And where select name, image URL, product ID, and let's keep this product ID first here, right? Product ID, name, image URL, price, item quantity from the card items, where the card ID will be the specific variable, right? And it will return if there's row count that's greater than 0, then card model, this is not the first index, it will be return everything, right? Otherwise it will return simply an empty array. Cool. This function we can just call it here. Now we can implement this find all the card items stuff, but again we need to check like whether this current card item exists or not. So what we can do, we can simply put a check right here, right before everything, right? All these things here, we can check if current card doesn't exist, right? Doesn't exist, then throw some kind of error, this error, right? This error, maybe not this one, this error we can just remove from here, and we can put it here, like card doesn't exist. Card doesn't exist, right? So we can just put a kind of error, or maybe we can put it like, you know, create card is failed, right? This create card is failed, we can put it something from here. Then we no need to check this one here as well as, we can just get rid of this one. And finally we can call this specific function that is called const items will be card items. Now let's go ahead and understand what exactly we did here. So first of all, we have validated the user and we have correct input, and we are finding out that the current card is exist or not. And if it doesn't exist, all right, then we are assigning again to this variable, right, and checking it here. If there is a kind of any error, then we are just returning from here. And if everything is correct, then let's go ahead and find the current product. And if current product is exist, then simply update the quantity. And if it doesn't exist, then go ahead and pull the product data from the product service from here. And once you are getting the whole thing, all right, or if you are having some kind of error, then return this message from here, right? So at least user can get to know, yeah, fail to add to cart, or maybe fail to get product and from product data. Yeah, that is also, it's a meaningful. Now once we are getting the data, right, this is the format we are using for returning the payload. And after that, we are casting this whole data to a card model, right? Absolutely. Then we are updating the card ID that is called from the current card ID that is we have added here, and finally updating the quantity as well as, and at last we are just creating the card item, right? And this is the way we are just creating it. Once the card creation is done, then we are returning all the data, right? The card items to the user, right? So this is the, it's a little bit big function, all right? But still we can just split it out in a separate section also, but it is necessary to keep it in one place. Now we can go ahead and give it a try, whether we are able to create this one or not. And once that is done, then we can cover the rest of all functions. Cool. From here, we need to run our user service as well as, but right before running this stuff, make sure we have added a couple of more things here. That is, we need to take care. Go to here in handler and user handler. You can see here we have added the delete function as well as, right? And put and delete will be required a specific parameter, right? That is, we need to handle in serverless YAML file. Let's check it out. Where is the card? Yeah, this one. So right after put, now we are going to put one parameter that is called ID, and one more HTTP API event is going to be needed. That is called delete, and this is going to be delete, right? And here, this one will be something like this. ID. Perfect. This is in the same index. Cool. So here one more thing is needed, that is called a timeout. We need to set some kind of timeout for our this handler, because while we're calling that specific function, all right, to create card, then by default time will be not going to cover because we are running from here in the localhost. So as you can see in the CDK, it's taking a little bit longer time than expected due to this the mimicking this partial environment, right? So that's why let's add some the timeout just for server side in order to get the proper data. So right after this one, we can put timeout will be 15 seconds as an example. All right. Now let's try to run the application. Right, so here's an issue. Like already our server is running on port 3000, the product service, right? But it is also try to use the same port number. So how we can change the port number? That is, we need to handle it here in the serverless.yaml file. That we can do it by providing some kind of variable that is called custom. It's like custom, right? Inside the custom, we can provide the stage as well as stage will be, as an example, Dave. Then we can utilize this stage right here. We are going to use the serverless offline, right? That will be accommodated the port number. So let's try to use a couple of code for serverless offline. Right, so these are the two ports we are just defining. So this is not necessary, but still Lambda port we need to define it, and the HTTP port we are defining for 4000, right? So let's try to spin the server once more. Yeah, now we can see it is running on the port 4000, right? Let's go to the Postman and try to call this specific product, right? This product we are perfectly able to get it from our product service mostly. Yeah, we are perfectly able to get it, right? Then copy this product ID from here and go to the user service, right? Go to the user service and here click on the create card because we need to log in first maybe. Just click on login. Okay, so we have some kind of the import issue, that is we need to figure out. So where? In the app message queue. In the here in the card service maybe. Yeah, this one. This is exactly we need to handle it, right? In next episode I'm gonna handle for sure, like we need to do a little bit configuration for handling all this kind of stuff, right? Now yeah, this is cool. Let's restart the server once more. Now server is running. Let's try to call once more. Okay, provided email ID doesn't exist. Let's try to sign up. Okay, sign up is done. Then login. Yeah, this is our user token. Copy this one and use here in the root directory, and the token we are just replacing this one. Save. Now again go to the products, get products by ID, or where we have called this one, right? This product ID. Copy and go to the create card section. So here we are just providing quantity 1 and provide the product ID here as well as, right? This one, the product, right? Now let's try to call this one. Okay, so now it says like connection refused 127.0.0.1.300. Okay, so we have a typo here in the user service, because while we are calling this one, we didn't put like the 3000, right? So add one more zero. So this is localhost 3000 and production queue. So let's try to restore the application once more. Yeah, again it is up and running. Let's go here in the card this time just to give it a try. Okay, so now you can see we are perfectly able to get this data, right? The item quantity is 1, and this is our product, this is our name, and all these things are perfectly, it's there while we're just creating the product, right? So if you go to the console, let's close this one, and you can see, maybe we can see the same thing. Yeah, that's cool. Now let's go to table plus. Let's check it out whether we have able to insert the data or not in the correctly in the shopping cart table. So this is our shopping cart. Yeah, one shopping cart ID is created, and if you go to cart item, you can see our cart item is also it's there, right? That's perfect. Now one thing is there. If we second time also we are going to add the same product, right? A create cart as an example, we are going to add one more, right? Then this item has to be updated, right? Let's try to do that thing. Now you can see it's updated too. And if I'm gonna put 2, then it has to become 4. Perfect. So now it is working. So this time it's pretty fast, right? It is not calling the product service because the data is already exists, right? If we are putting something else, right, then it will gonna take a little bit longer time. So if you can go ahead and get products as an example, this URL. So CDK is performing a little bit late from the localhost because of the virtual environment, right? It is not just as fast as like the serverless framework. So, but it's fine for us. Let's go ahead to add this one, the iPhone 14, right? This one we are grabbing it and create one more card for this one. Yeah. Initially, we are putting only 1, then send it. Now it's taking a little bit longer because it's internally it is getting called the product service as well as. So if you can see, it is calling this one, right? And if we see, like right now we have 2 items, right? And if I'm gonna put one more as an example, I can import one more iPhone or maybe 2 more iPhones, right? Then send it. Yeah, now you can see this and we have 3 iPhones and 3 pipe MacBook Pro, right? So yeah, that's all for this episode. So as you can see here, and finally we have created our card, right? Going through all this logic, and we are able to perfectly communicate with the product service as well as, where we have exposed one service, one Lambda function that is going to handle all the communication. Later stage we are going to convert this whole thing to our message queue and some other call as well as, but for a while at least it is handling all the communication, giving the data, and finally we are perfectly able to create the card. So now, right now you can see our database is localDB, right? So we cannot deploy these things pointed to localDB. So somehow we need to set up our RDS in our AWS account. That is, we are going to handle it in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching this video tutorial, and I hope you like this video tutorial. If you really like this video tutorial, hit the like button and subscribe if you have not subscribed to my channel. There are a lot of informations I'm gonna put throughout of this series. That's going to be very, very helpful if you are looking for a kind of pure backend developer, or if you wish to upgrade your knowledge to the pro level. I would like to see you in the upcoming episodes. Thank you.